Welcome to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast. I'm Mike Calabrese, joined by Sean Zerillo. We're going to break down Monday's slate. And as always, you can count on us for Monday, Tuesday, and Friday best bet episodes, as well as some Yurfie Nerfies and home run props. Today, we're lucky enough to have Grant and Neiffer parachuting in at the end to give out his best home run bets here on Monday. Looking at the headlines here, Vlad gets $500 million from Toronto. Good for him. The Phillies ran off Glasnow to take Game 3 and the series from the Dodgers, and the Rangers stay hot, sweeping the Rays with their fifth, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, one-run wins of the entire season. So the Rangers have been living on the edge. I feel like we're going to have a pick from their game coming up from Sean. But first, Sean, let me get your take on a Q&A out of the New York Times on Sunday with Commissioner Manfred. He addressed the torpedo bat controversy, or in his opinion, a nothing burger. He said, and I quote, because people get into a complete frenzy over something that's really nothing at the end of the day, the bats comply with the rules. So were you surprised that he came out so strongly in favor of the bats? The fact that by the letter of the law, they're fine. It seems like it's creating more offense for the Yankees and a few other players across the league. He considers that a good thing. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not surprised by it at all. I'm glad he said something so people aren't waiting in the dark wondering whether these things are legal or not. But teams aren't even allowed to use these bats in a game until they're approved by Major League Baseball. So this is something that had already been approved behind the scenes. Major League Baseball does not owe a duty to the other teams to tell everybody else, hey, this one team develop a new bat that's going to help them. You guys should be aware of this too. Like, they're going to let the Yankees have the advantage for a little bit because it's something they developed. They had it approved privately. They get to use them in games. Now other teams say, hey, maybe we should take advantage of this piece of technology too. So other teams, other players are starting to have these bats develop, but they do take about 4 to 6 weeks from what I've gathered to create them. So there's going to be a bit of a time delay before other teams are able to use them. But from what we've seen, there is no increase in terms of fly ball distance as a result of similar exit velocity, similar launch angles, so a similar trajectory on batted balls, no increase from the torpedo bats. All it's doing is increasing collision efficiency. And by that, we mean fewer mishits and more barrels, or a greater chance of hitting the ball square where you want to based on that individual player. Because just to reiterate, these are not one-size-fit-all bats. Otherwise, they would be much easier to make and to order and to get into the hands of these players more quickly. This is more of an individualized process where data science teams, analytic teams in these organizations, on these teams, are going in, finding data capture based on where players are striking the bat on the ball relative to their typical performance, and then moving the barrel to that optimized point in the bat. So it's all individualized. There is no increase in terms of fly ball distance, but it is going to increase overall efficiency when guys swing, because it's going to lead to fewer mishits. It's going to lead to increased good contact overall. So I think it's fine. I think it's a good way to increase offense in the game overall. I'm surprised it took this long for teams to develop this, because as we discussed last week, tapered bats, there's a history that goes back to George Wright in the 1800s. George Wright, MLB's first superstar before there was really like fully organized baseball, but playing for the Cincinnati Red Stockings, he would develop a tapered bat and they would break. And then they would go, okay, we can't afford to keep doing this because it's the 1800s and we can only afford to chip in so much for a piece of wood to taper for everybody. So these weakened bats, right, they weren't able to keep using them. But now 100 plus years later, think about how many bats each player has, how many hockey sticks guys go through in an individual game or season. Like, we're constantly replacing materials and equipment. So it's something that's going to stick around. And I would imagine in a matter of years, as more guys are coming up, using them in minor leagues, using them in college ball if they're able to. I don't know if they're going to be able to taper metal bats. But, as the technology changes, as guys get more accustomed to swinging with this type of equipment, I do think it's going to overtake and become the majority bat used by players around the majors in a number of years. And I think you're already starting to see, that slow progression, but over time, I think it's going to become even more dramatic.
All right, let's get into your first best bet here on Monday. Toronto traveling to Boston. The road trip has not gone so well for the Blue Jays so far. They get swept by the Mets. They're outscored 10-3 in that series with a pair of one-run losses. And now they're turning to Easton Lucas in just his second career start. The Sox are countering with a far more seasoned option. Richard Fitz has 5 career starts already. So my question here right off the bat is, how do you handicap with so little data on both starting pitchers?
Yeah, so we have projections for both of these guys, which are based off of minor league equivalencies or, in some cases, the stuff that they've already thrown at the major league level, projections like Oopsie, are pulling in major league stuff, major league bat speed, etc., and adjusting the projections off of that. So that's why I think a projection system like Oopsie is really cool, because it's going to continue to adjust based off of live data that we have, as opposed to taking a weighted 3-year sample, and looking backwards. Is actually kind of looking forward based on current data, got things that guys did yesterday. So projected FIP ranges for these two, Fitz and Lucas, very similar. Lucas is between 4.445 and 481. Fitz is 443 to 486. Now, I prefer Fitz stuff. I prefer his arsenal overall because he does have a better fastball. Lucas has cutter, slider. The fastball changeup is a bit below average. So I think overall going forward, I prefer Richard Fitz, aka Dick Fitz, one of the best names in the sport right now. But in terms of like the rest spot, the Red Sox coming off of the doubleheader yesterday, their two longer relievers, Whitlock, Cooper Criswell, not going to be available because they threw a ton of pitches yesterday. They do have their A bullpen essentially ready. They had that off day, unplanned off day on Saturday with the rain out. Had the doubleheader yesterday, but Chapman didn't throw more than 19 pitches. He should be fine today. So I give the Red Sox a slight bullpen advantage, even coming off that doubleheader. But you do have to ding them for rest and fatigue after playing 18 innings on Sunday. They played essentially everybody except Christian Casas for both games. So their regular lineup should be a little bit more fatigued today than it normally would be. Now, my favorite bet on this game was the under, just because of the wind and the weather and the conditions. Action Labs under system triggered here for wind and weather. At Fenway specifically, that system's hit at about a 61% rate since 2005. I would make this 10.5 on a normal day. I make it 8.3 today. The total has come down from 9 to 8.5. I wanted 9 at minus 115. There are some 8.5s at plus 105 out there. Plus 105 is okay. Even money, not okay. If you can get 8.5 plus 105, I'm interested. Under 9 to minus 115, I'm interested. Otherwise, pass on the total. But I actually make Toronto a small favorite in this game, like minus 102. It's basically a coin flip for me. I'm happy to bet them at plus 110 or better with the Red Sox coming off the doubleheader yesterday. Toronto's lineup, offensively, defensively, I actually make very comparable to the Red Sox lineup. I prefer them defensively. Make these teams both very good defensive teams. The real thing here, though, is the split. I much prefer the Red Sox offense against right-handed pitching as opposed to left-handed pitching. When you get the lefties in there, can counteract Casas and Devers, Jarren Duran. Devers finally starting to hit a little bit yesterday. So the splits having lefty on the mound for Toronto, I think gives them enough of an advantage here to bet it at plus 110 or better. And then, as I said, the under down to 9-115 or 8.5 at plus 105. And then we'll see where I end up on the rest of the series with Boston, assuming Toronto's going to be throwing right-handed starters. Because with this matchup was initially supposed to be Garrett Crochet against Jose Barrios, and I showed an edge on Boston as a favorite. And again, I'm not betting favorites nearly as much as I'm betting underdogs typically. So if I show an edge on a favorite, it's typically meaningful to me. And if we get that Crochet Barrios matchup, expect to be on the favorite at about minus 150 or better.
All right, if we piqued your interest with a short dog, let's go a little bit bolder here. Detroit welcoming in the New York Yankees. After getting knocked around by the Dodgers in a series sweep to start the year, Detroit rebounded with a sweep of their own against the Chicago White Sox. With the Yankees coming to town, they're putting up Casey Mize on the bump, looking to build off of a fantastic debut. He went 5 2/3, 6 Ks, 1 hit, 0 runs against the Mariners in a 4-1 win. Tell me why you'd like Detroit as a plus 145 dog here.
This team's hitting. I've tried to bet at unders a few times on their games against the Dodgers, against the Mariners, and they just keep hitting. They're third in baseball, 132 WRC plus so far this year. I don't know if it's a scouting thing or a player development thing or just early luck or, a combination of all three. But this team is raking right now. And I don't like them as much going against the left-handed pitcher with Kerry Carpenter essentially coming out of the lineup or being neutralized. Carpenter career about 150 WRC plus against righties, 75 against lefties, a huge drop-off in his splits. But even if he doesn't start, they'll have him available for the late innings to come off the bench and pitch hit. And I enjoy watching Kerry's at-bats as much as almost any hitter at this point when he's facing a right-handed pitcher. He can pull the ball down the line. He can go to the opposite field. He's just an absolute professional hitter. I love watching Kerry Carpenter. But this bet more so for me is about Casey Mize and his potential development into this season. He's now 2 years removed from Tommy John surgery, which we do like to see. You know, ACLs, Tommy John, like the only guy I can remember who came back from those injuries within a year and got back to peak level. I'm sure you could say it off the top of your head, Mike. ACL, Tommy John surgery. Who's the only athlete you've ever seen come back within a year at full speed?
For ACL, it's probably Adrian Peterson.
Yep.
And years ago, I actually interviewed the surgeon who performed it. And his direct quote was, "The man's a freak. He just does not have a body of this world." So yeah, for every single success story like that, 99% of the others are long-term, long road to recovery stories.
It's Adrian Peterson. He's the outlier, right? And maybe there's been a guy with Tommy John who came back. We have an internal brace procedure now for Tommy John, which is what Spencer Strider had. That's now kind of like a shortcut with Tommy John, where guys can kind of get back in 9 months. And it seems like that may be the next step in the progression. I'm not sure what the difference is in the injury that allows guys to have the internal brace versus the full-blown Tommy John, but it seems like we may now have like a shortcut to getting guys back a little bit quicker from TJ surgery. Mize had regular Tommy John, and this is year 2. So we're expecting that this is where he's going to come back, maybe into peak form now that he's about 27, 28 years old, former first overall pick. Not going to live up to that first overall pick hype. Do not expect this guy to turn into the AL Cy Young all of a sudden, but I do think he can be a league average starter, where he's been more of a replacement level pitcher for the past couple of seasons. So Mize made an adjustment this year to his pitch mix. He scrapped his knuckle curveball, which was below average pitch by Stuff Plus, 97 Stuff Plus. He's throwing a new, harder curveball, 83.4 miles an hour. The knuckle curve was around 79. He threw that pitch about a quarter of the time at his first start, 100 Stuff Plus rating. So Stuff metrics say it's a better pitch. He's confident throwing it aggressively. It's coming in a little bit harder, but his splitter velocity is also harder, which I really like to see, because that pitch was averaging about 86 miles an hour previously. It probably is his best pitch. It's now up to 88.5 this season, and the Stuff Plus on it jumped. I think you're seeing some intentional adjustments from Casey Mize this year. Overall, his slider usage is down, but now he's got 3 above average pitches: the curve at 100, sinker at 118 Stuff Plus, or 101, and then the splitter at 118. And you've got all 3 things. You've got the curve going down and into lefties, you've got the sinker going down and into righties, and then you've got the splitter going over the top, neutralizing lefties, but also righties swinging over the top of it too. And he's typically had more of a lefty-righty split, or he's a typical splits guy where he's more effective against righties than he is against lefties. I think getting that curve off against lefties is going to help him a ton. 5 of the 6 batters he struck out in his first start were left-handed hitters. So overall, I think you're seeing Casey Mize find a mix that can help him optimize a little bit against either handedness of hitter. I think you're seeing the best version of him in terms of command and velocity. 2 years removed now from Tommy John, and you're going to see a little bit more consistency with that command from start to start, because that was mostly his issue last year. We would bid on Casey Mize. He'd be fine for one start, then he'd walk 4 guys the next start. Like, the command was coming and going. I expect a little bit more consistency from him this season. Another thing I should mention was it's the same spot for the Yankees as they had, what was it, last Friday, but the Pirates against them. They had a game yesterday, get on the plane, get off the plane, 3 o'clock start. Like, everybody else is playing at 7 o'clock today after traveling. The Yankees, for some reason, are playing at 3:30, so getting to the field, around now, right? Around when we're recording at 10 a.m., like, all just a little bit rushed, a little bit compressed for the Yankees relative to what you would normally expect after a travel day and then getting to play at night. They're rushed up by about 3-4 hours. So just less time to prep for bullpen, less time to prep for the starting pitcher, etc. Like, it's all just like a 1% advantage pushing in the Tigers' direction in terms of travel, rest, preparation, etc. But I made this line plus 117 regardless of all of that, regardless of any potential travel or rest advantages. I bet the Tigers down to plus 130. Like this spot for them, like them in this series, and just like the way they're playing in general to start the year. This team is hitting. They look like they're a playoff team. They look like they are as good as where they ended last season, if not better. And I bet them to win the AL Central. I still like them as easily the best team in the division. The eye test, they're passing with flying colors so far.
All right, let's look at some other plays on your card. The Sacktown A's are still looking for their first home win. And in this one against the Padres, they're trotting out Severino, who had a great first outing against Seattle, went 6 innings, 6 Ks, and then got shelled facing the Chicago Cubs the second go-around. He's up against the big righty Michael King, who just mowed down 11 in 5 innings of work against the Guardians in his last start. So with the boomer bust element of Severino, talk me through some of the value up against King, who looked, like an all-star, at least in that small sample size. So what are you seeing in this pitching matchup? Or is it more so get into the bullpen and hope the A's can take it then?
To a degree, outside of Mason Miller, I don't really love the A's bullpen. They're also coming off of a series in Colorado where they were able to kind of rescue their bullpen yesterday. Mitch Spence threw half the game yesterday and was able to rest their relievers after they threw back-to-back days. Essentially, the A's used their A bullpen on back-to-back days to start the series in Colorado, rested it with a long reliever yesterday. So the bullpen coming home in decent shape. There typically is that adjustment coming off of Coors Field that we've talked about. That Coors Field hangover effect, particularly for offenses who they get used to hitting at Coors Field, they come back to their home park. It's a little bit different in terms of lifting the ball or just putting the bat on the ball. There's not as much room in the outfield, etc. Now, Sutter Health Park remains to be seen how it's going to play the rest of the year because we had 3 absolute blitz overs in the first 3 games there. I bet the under 8.5 in the first game, stayed away for the second 2 games. So don't give me too much shit. I saw people being like, you have to adjust your park factors for Sacramento. I was like, I bet the under one timing loss that I've stayed away since. Like, let's all relax. I got the information I needed. I saw this park is clearly not going to play, even in 55-degree weather, as low scoring as we would expect. Now, the projected park factors on this place put it at about a league average park. Watching it actually play out does seem like it's going to be above that, and we haven't even factored in the warmer weather that we're going to get there over the summer. Now, in terms of tonight's matchup, it is 10 degrees warmer than it was earlier in the week. All 3 games earlier in the week in Sacramento were around 55 degrees, 52, 55, 58 degrees. It's going to be 65 degrees at first pitch area tonight with winds blowing out, about 8-mile-an-hour winds blowing out. Fangraphs did some studies. The wind should not have as much of an impact in Sacramento as it does in Tampa Bay, for instance. There's much more cover for the wind in Sacramento. So the wind, we talked about this, Mike, the wind stream effects in this minor league park aren't going to have as much of an impact as you might expect. In Tampa Bay, they're going to have a dramatic impact. In fact, Fangraphs already did an article, put out a study showing the wind in Tampa at Steinbrenner Field is going to have a more dramatic impact potentially than Wrigley Field. The average wind speeds are higher. There's less wind cover. And between day games where it's blowing out and night games where it's blowing in, as a result of the ocean water nearby, it's going to have a dramatically different effect whether the Rays are playing day games or night games in Tampa. So something to keep a very close eye on as we continue to discuss these new parks, these minor league parks throughout the season, Steinbrenner Field and Sutter Health Park. Steinbrenner Field during the day should be a major advantage for hitters. Typically, at night should be an advantage for pitchers, typically, because the wind is going to be blowing in as opposed to blowing out, generally speaking. In Oakland, we're going to get Sacramento, we're going to get much warmer temperatures over this summer than we're getting right now. Average temperatures are going to be about 20 degrees warmer than they are even today. But even today, it seems like the books are betting people or daring people to bet the over 8.5. I bet it at plus money. I've seen some plus 105s today. I've seen some books move down to 8, minus 118 to the over. It seems like the money has come in on the over. Public saw, all the scoring that happened last week. I basically make it a neutral park tonight. I made the total about 8.75. If we get a pitcher-friendly umpire, or if we get a neutral umpire, hitter-friendly umpire, happy to stay on that bet. If we get a pitcher-friendly umpire, I may buy back a little bit on the 8.5 to the under, just until we get more information on this park. But like I said, I make it neutral tonight, make it 8.75. And if it's going to be a higher scoring, higher variance game, that only helps Oakland, who I make the underdog here, but I make them closer to plus 110. So anything plus 120 or better. I keep saying Oakland. I'm so sorry if you're a fan of the A's. It's a habit that's going to be very difficult to break. We had to break through the Indians Guardians habit the first season that Cleveland switched over their name. So we're doing our best here to not say, the city that I've mentioned multiple times by name, that I'm doing my best not to mention going forward. But we love the people of Oakland. I'm sad to see that their team left. They deserve so much better. And if I'm saying the word Oakland, it's only because I have love for that place, not because I've forgotten where they moved to. But yeah, A's money line down to plus 120, and then the over at 8.5 even money. Umpire dependent. No umpires for any of these games yet. So keep an eye on the Action Network app. I may buy out or buy onto total depending on umpire assignments.
Next up on the slate, a pair of division leaders, the Cubs hosting the Texas Rangers. My question is simple here. Is this a buy low spot on Justin Steele? Because he's given up 5 dingers already this season. He's been hit really hard across his 3 starts. Talk me through why this could be an opportunity for him to have a bounce back performance.
Yeah, Steele, his last start I thought was fine. First 2 starts, going overseas, coming back after a break, like not being on regular rest, stuff can go awry there. But seems to be back in the regular rhythm now, fully stretched out too, which I like considering the Cubs bullpen is a little banged up in terms of rest for today. They had a very grueling series against the Padres, used a ton of pitchers yesterday. But I bet the under all 3 games over the weekend at Wrigley. This is the worst weather that there's been in 4 days. It's 35 degrees at first pitch with a real feel of 22, 11 to 14 mile an hour winds blowing in. And over the weekend, it was about 45 degrees with 6 to 8 mile an hour winds. So 10 degrees cooler, double the wind speed blowing in as compared to over the weekend, and also better starting pitchers than we had over the weekend at any point. So I made this total about 5.5, which is crazy. It's so low. I'd make it about 8.5 on a normal day at Wrigley. Maybe 8, closer to 8 on a normal day at Wrigley with these 2 pitchers. And this triggered the same Action Lab system as we had triggered at Fenway for wind and weather. Another 60% win rate, 14% ROI straight up at Wrigley Field. This is the most profitable park, though, for that betting system. Now, Nathan Eovaldi, I think, has looked sick through his 2 starts. He changed his pitch mix a little bit. He's increased his curveball usage. He stopped throwing his fastball as much, which is cool to see from a guy getting into his mid to late 30s now, because fastball velocity decreases as you get older. But also fastballs, 4-seam fastballs, are hit harder than any other pitch type. And we saw the Red Sox kind of modify their pitching approach last year. We've seen the league in general move a little bit away from 4-seam fastballs, more towards introducing secondary stuff. Because if you can find a good balance between showing the fastball enough to make the hitters expect that it could come versus actually throwing the pitches that they're going to have to, change their approach to, right, in terms of speed or velocity or movement, it's going to throw off their timing. So finding that balance is very appropriate. Well, Eovaldi went from about a 50% fastball rate to a 25% fastball rate over his first 2 starts. So he's almost half his fastball usage. It's really extreme. Well, interested to see if he keeps that up throughout the season. But throwing the splitter, throwing the curveball much more, I just like the approach. I think he can outpitch his projections the rest of the way and have a career year. That's the Texas side of things. Justin Steele, though, is the hard hit suppression king. And when you're talking about playing in a ballpark that has these extreme temperatures and conditions, any batted ball in the air is not going to fly as far as it normally would. And when you have a guy who's counteracting that with hard contact suppression skills on top of that, like, it's difficult to find runs in this game aside from guys walking in hitters or just getting a bloop base hit with a couple of runners on base, after you've already given up a couple bloops. There's not going to be too many hard hit balls in this game based on these starting pitchers. Now, part of the reason those unders blew up over the weekend was command for the pitchers. I mentioned for the Friday podcast when I bet the under that Randy Vasquez scared the shit out of me in terms of his command. He walked in a batter, in the 3rd inning. I believe he walked 4 consecutive hitters or 4 out of 5 hitters. That was like, I was watching this unfold and I was like, we cashed the under. I'm glad we cashed it. But I was also glad that I nailed it, like Randy Vasquez absolutely terrifying me with the command, because 1 base hit in that scenario and you go from a 3-1 game to maybe a 6-1 game, right? And the total goes over 6.5. When you're playing under 5s and a halves, under 6s, under 6.5, it's on a knife's edge the whole game. Like, anytime there's runner on base, you're scared out of your mind, which is what makes it so difficult to bet, because the moment it gets to 3-3, you've already lost. So I do not like betting under 5.5. I do not like betting under 6.5. But the market did come down. I took 6.5 plus money, I believe, and I think it's already getting close to -110. So 6 -110 or better. Still okay with betting it. It's not going to be a fun sweat. And then the Cubs money line up to -133. I do give them the better defense than Texas, and I rate the offenses very comparably. I've been really high on Texas. I bet on them more than any other team this season. The team I bet second most is probably the Cubs, and I'm on the Cubs in this particular head-to-head. Now, not a bet I love. I prefer the under, and I don't love the under either just because it's so low. So not a fun game to bet at all. But the Cubs up to -133 and the under 6 to -110. at Wrigley. And I would expect I'll keep betting on these teams going forward just because they rate really well defensively in my model. And that's one of the places where I think I separate, compared to the consensus market projection is I factor in defense a little bit more heavily, base running a little bit more heavily. And the Cubs in particular they may be the best defensive team in my model. I thought it was Toronto earlier this year, but now that I've seen the numbers with the backups and the reserves switched in, et cetera, like I think the Cubs on average are probably my number one defensive club. They're so elite. PCA is maybe the best defensive center fielder in baseball. I'd put him in the conversation. And then Tucker and Happ are both top 7 in defensive runs saved amongst all outfielders over the past 3 years. So you have 3 Gold Glovers. You have Dansby, who's the best shortstop defensively up the middle. Nico Horner's a pretty solid defender. The only hole on the roster defensively is Matt Shaw, and he's like an average defender. So, yeah, the Cubs are so good defensively. They're really a joy to watch. But in terms of robbing hits, in what should already be a low-scoring game, that could ultimately be the difference.
Up next, we got the Mariners hosting Houston. Seattle couldn't wait to get out of San Francisco. They got swept. They lost Robles to that nasty injury, him going over the fence in right field trying to save that ball. But there's a lot to like, and it starts with the 6'6" Logan Gilbert in this one. Through 2 starts, 18 strikeouts in 12 innings of work. That's enough for me. And when I saw this price, I was all in on the M's here. Is there anything else that piqued your interest in terms of the home dog in this spot?
Well, no, I'm the Astros. So Gilbert
Gilbert's
sorry. Great. I bet. Yeah, no, I might have put that in the sheet wrong. I think I put Mariners at plus money like in the sheet, but I meant to type out Astros. That's completely my fault. But
I think it sounds like we have our first head-to-head bet here of payoff pitch then, because at least the way that you put it in, I started digging around in the numbers. There's plenty to like, but I make your case on the other side.
Yeah, so I love Logan Gilbert. Bet him for AL Cy Young, one of my favorite pitchers in the game. I do think the Robles injury could be significant. It just takes some speed and defense out of the Mariners lineup. I prefer Houston's lineup, both offensively and defensively. I make them slightly better offensively. I thought I would have made them much better offensively. But going to Seattle kind of knocks everybody down offensively, and you have to adjust their splits. So Houston, slight advantage, about a 3% advantage offensively. Seattle, the better base running team, even with Victor Robles going down, but I much prefer Houston defensively. And that's the difference for me between the two lineups. But Hayden Wesniewski, I'm also generally higher on relative to the projection market. I think most projection systems out there probably have him about a 4.5 ERA, 4.5 to 5 in that range, FIP type projection. I'm closer to 4 on Hayden Wesniewski. Career 101 stuff plus, 101 pitching plus, 3.5 bot ERA. He has 5 pitches. He has an above average slider and changeup. He's still figuring out how to optimize that mix fully. This is a guy I bet on when he was with the Cubs. The Astros went out and trade. I think they got him in the did they get him in the Kyle Tucker trade? He might have been part of that. It's the only way I could see him having gotten there, because I don't think these teams made another trade over the offseason. But yeah, overall, I make Houston about plus 125. So anything plus 140 or better on Houston for me. I'm not super high on either the Mariners or the Astros. And in general, this is like the sweet spot of price range where I find I have success betting on underdogs, about that plus 120 to plus 180 range where you're getting teams who are relatively equally competitive, but there may be a difference in the starting pitching matchup. You're not talking about Mets versus Marlins where the money line is going to be more north of minus 200, or even Dodgers and Nationals today. I project slight value on Mackenzie Gore and the Nationals. The Nationals are around plus 150. Like technically that's in that range. But looking at a team like the Dodgers against the Nationals expected to win 100 games versus 70 games, like that's where you start to get out of the range of competitiveness when you're constantly betting teams in this price range that are all expected to win above 80 games, all be within a similar win total as one another. I mean, I had the Astros and the Mariners basically neck and neck coming into the year. The Mariners clearly have a starting pitching advantage here, but I still don't put it past, plus 130 or minus 130, minus 125. So that's like a similar thing as the Blue Jays Red Sox matchup. I had the Blue Jays and Red Sox basically equal coming into the year. I make these starting pitchers basically equal. I make this game basically a coin flip. Like, The Astros and Mariners, same thing. I make these two teams basically even. You have to adjust for the starting pitching matchup. I don't really get Gilbert above minus 130, even against Hayden Wesniewski. So surprising to me, frankly, because I bet on Gilbert in his first two starts. I bet on his first 5 money line in each of his first two starts. I'm not out here intentionally trying to bet on guys or intentionally trying to bet against guys. I'm letting the model sort of guide my behavior and the market guide my behavior from one matchup to the next. Was on Gilbert twice in a row. Now we're against them here, just letting the money or just letting the number do the talking. But yeah, Wisniewski, a guy in general, I'm not surprised to find myself betting on, because if you followed me last year, we bet on him more often than not when he started for the Cubs too. I just think the stuff models, the underlying indicators for what's coming out of his hand project better than overall projection systems might put him.
All right, let's close out with the Orioles heading to the desert to take on the Snakes. The question here is, can the O's bats come alive? They just scored 8 runs across 5 games, and now you're drawing Zach Gallen, who just quieted the Yankees bats with an absolute gem in his last outing. 6 2/3, 13 Ks, 3 hits, 0 earned. So the Orioles, is this just kind of a bit of a contrarian play, hoping that they can catch fire in terms of heading into a new city, trying to refresh everybody, getting in the right headspace? I know that they're getting a little bit healthier, but is there any other reason for optimism for Baltimore in this series?
I think Zach Eflin's the better pitcher than Zach Gallen. I prefer Eflin. Now, Stuff Plus models would probably agree with that. Expected ERA would also agree with that. Eflin, 3.7 expected ERA last season, 3.02 in 2023, 3.24 in 2022. Gallen has been at 4 and 4.16 the past 2 years. And his velocity is going down. His Stuff Plus is going down every single season. His fastball velocity is down to a career low, 92.8 miles an hour this season. It's about a tick below where he was last year, about a mile and a half hour below where he was 2 years ago. And his Stuff Plus, as I said, keeps dropping every single season. So the velocity, the stuff, all in concert moving down. The strikeout minus walk rate dipped 3% last year. I still think Zach Allen's a very good pitcher. I think he's better than those Stuff Plus, markers indicate. But I do view him as closer to a league average starter. A 4 expected ERA or so per StatCast. Zach Eflin, I think, is closer to the number 2s than he is to the number 3s. He has excellent command, and that command gives him a super high floor. The biggest differences here between the two are hard hit rate and home run rate, but they do not align with the same pitcher, which I find very interesting. Eflin, career 35% hard hit rate, 1.3 home runs per 9. Gallen, 40% hit rate, 0.95 home runs per 9. Well, Arizona suppresses home runs. Most people don't realize this because it is an offensive park. Typically an offensive leaning park, about 1 to 3% above the major league average, even with the roof closed. Gallen, as a right-handed pitcher, benefits from left-handed home run suppression in Arizona. Jock Peterson went there last year. You saw Jock Peterson's home run total decline. Josh Naylor this year, you'll see a dip for Josh Naylor's home run total this year. Arizona is terrible for left-handed power. There's a reason you don't see balls hit into the pool constantly at Chase Field. It's actually like 27th for left-handed power in all of baseball. So I think sticking Eflin in a park where he could potentially neutralize those left-handed home runs, keep runners off base by walking fewer guys as compared to Zach Gallen, who posted a career high walk rate last season. I think in general, this is a good fit for Eflin against the Diamondbacks offense that is extremely patient. He's going to be a guy who's pounding the zone and getting ahead of these hitters. So I think it's a good matchup for Eflin. I view him as the better starting pitcher. I don't like the direction that Gallen's velocity or overall metrics are trending. Offense is, to me, pretty comparable. Slight lean to the Orioles bullpen, but I made this line about even money. I bet it at plus 110 or better. I think I made it plus 102. I also, though, lean to the over. I'm at 8.7 on the total. I need umpire here before I'm going to bet it. If it's even a slight pitcher leaning umpire, I'm out. I'll make it closer to 8.6, and I'd be out at 8.5. If it's a neutral umpire or a hitter-friendly umpire, I'd be happy with 8.5 at plus money to the over, maybe even a little bit higher than that. So keep an eye on the total umpires for this game in particular. It's the closest one that I'm coming to betting. The other one that I'm closest to betting is the Mets under 7. Just a little bit scared off of that given the Marlins pitcher, the Marlins pitching situation. The Mets offense really unlucky with runners in scoring position over the weekend. I bet the under in all 3 games against Toronto. think they went 3 for 18 and stranded like 15 runners. A couple of hits and a couple of those overs cash in Citi Field over the weekend. So close to betting the Mets under, close to betting the D-backs over. Want to wait for umpires before I actually decide on those games. But a number of underdogs, as I said, in that plus 110, to plus 150, plus 160 range today that I'm happy to bet. I like betting underdogs in this range, and hopefully a number of them cash. We had a few underdogs cash on Sunday that I didn't even fire on. The Nationals, the Pirates were both in range. I didn't fire. The White Sox blew their game in the 9th inning. So maybe the dog's starting to come alive a little bit after a chalkier first week. And maybe that means some good things for Houston in the national title game tonight.
Before we get out of here, let's toss it over to Grant Neiffer from Scores and Odds for some home run bets on today's slate.
Thanks, guys. Let's get into some home run bets. I'm going to be placing mine over on DK today. Don't forget to opt into your no sweat home run parlay when you throw this in there, because worst case scenario, you get back some bonus bets. Let's get right into it. First off, I'm going off with Manny Machado. Odds on him are different from different websites. Over at DK, they have him at plus 475. Now, the matchup overall isn't a great one. Severino is a guy who has been right around average, maybe slightly above average at suppressing power to righties. But I really don't care when I'm getting odds like this on Machado today. The ballpark is great for home runs. Sacramento has been fantastic so far this season for power, and the weather over there today, not bad. 67, mid-50s humidity, wind blowing out slightly. So above average to average weather condition, especially for this time of year where it's cold all across the U.S. So bump there compared to playing down in San Diego. Really like Machado today. And then also in that same game, going with Tatis. Tatis has looked good so far this season. He's looking healthier. The underlying numbers are all good. And again, matchup versus Severino, only average, but the ballpark, big upgrade from playing down in San Diego here. So plus 400 is way too high of odds, in my opinion, for Tatis. And lastly, Brent Rooker. Now, he's only at 475 over at DK, at plus 500 over at MGM. But Rooker is one of the best home run hitters in the league. Coming off a massive season, 39 home runs, despite playing in one of the worst ballparks in the league for home runs over in Oakland. Now, over in Sacramento, good ballpark for power, potentially a great ballpark for power. We'll see how the season plays out. I'm expecting it to be one of the best ballparks for home runs overall this season, and Rooker is going to be one of the biggest beneficiaries. The matchup versus King, a below average one. King, very good at limiting righty power, but we're getting good odds on this, plus 475 at DK, plus 500 at MGM. I take him on either. I have the odds on him just around plus 400. So big value there. Parlay all of them together, and you get plus 16,000 here. That's 160 to 1. So that's what I'm rolling with today for my parlay today. Want more picks like these? Don't forget to follow me on the Action app. I'm out of here. Later, guys.
Appreciate it, Grant. Hopefully no warning track power for you on Monday. That'll do it for us for today's episode of Payoff Pitch. Thank you for tuning in. If you'd like to tail some of the bets that you heard from today's episodes, just go ahead and look for the quick slip links in the episode description. And don't forget to download the free award-winning Action Network app and leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to the podcast. Also, check out the Action Network Discord. There's a link in the episode description of this podcast. We'll be back tomorrow for more best bets from the bigs. For Sean Zerillo, I'm Mike Calabrese. Thanks for listening to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast, and good luck with all your bets.